For a long time, I thought being healthy meant that we needed to be consuming moderate amounts of oils in order to get those essential fatty acids that our body really needs, and that it was needed in order to maintain a healthy, balanced diet. I used to think things like drizzling virgin olive oil over my salad was a good thing, as well as sauteing vegetables in coconut oil or avocado oil, which generally have a high heat threshold, was considered healthy. I used to even think that it was essential to marinate a lot of the spices that we use in a number of Indian foods that we cook in a little bit of oil before starting the entire cooking process. However, all that I was doing was marinating myself in a whole lot of inflammation. And I'm going to break all that down in this video. So this is not one that we want to miss out, because so many of us have fallen victim to this very same practice. I know it's confession time, and I've been guilty of this for a very long time, until very recently, and it's only the light of knowledge and awareness that helps us make these better choices, to recognize how many of these beliefs about healthy foods have actually been distorted and have led us to a very treacherous path when it comes to managing our health. So stay tuned and let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of Navigating Wellness. Now, if you're someone that suffers with weird skin issues, brain fog, just feeling off after consuming a healthy meal or a healthy snack, or having these random energy crashes in the middle of the day, then there's a good chance that cooking oils or seed oils, or even some of these so-called healthy oils like coconut oil, avocado oil, or virgin olive oil, have something to do with why you're experiencing these symptoms. In this video, we're going to break it all down, so let's dive right in. The reason why a lot of these cooking oils are generally bad for us is that they're extremely inflammatory. Now, not just because they have a high omega-6 fatty acid ratio, it's also because they are a very concentrated form of the toxins, anti-nutrients, both natural as well as the sprayed chemicals, pesticides. They end up becoming a very toxic concentration of all these anti-nutrients. And when we introduce this to our body, it causes this inflammation extravaganza. And is probably the reason why many of us tend to experience very poor skin outcomes after consuming foods that contain a number of these oils. Things like joint pain and even bigger issues like cardiovascular diseases are often due to us consuming these so-called oils, healthy oils, seed oils, you name it. They're often behind a number of these conditions that we are experiencing. Secondly, a number of these seed oils are not just a little toxic, they are chemical plant level toxic. A number of these seed oils are actually extracted using a petroleum-based solvents like hexane. They then go on to be bleached and then deodorized so that they don't end up smelling that bad to us. So a number of these so-called heart healthy golden oils that are often marketed to us as being essential for our health are actually the Frankenstein of the food world. At this stage, it's probably sounding like these seed oils, cooking oils, they're not even a food anymore. They sound more like a science experiment that we shouldn't even be consuming in the first place. Unfortunately, I know I'm guilty of consuming these foods for a number of years. And sometimes we can't avoid consuming these foods, because when we go out to places like restaurants and we consume foods, we may not be aware of the oils that they are using in the cooking process. These oils tend to mess with our blood, especially the oils that are processed and unstable fats that tend to thicken our blood and prevent our cells from grabbing onto the glucose to help us sustain our energy levels throughout the day. So that's why many of us tend to experience these 3 p.m. crashes, because our cells in our blood are just not able to grab onto the glucose that it needs. And unfortunately, things like fresh fruits, high carbohydrate vegetables tend to get the blame for a number of our energy crashes. These seed oils is especially hard. They are lurking everywhere, from your processed foods like your sauces, to packaged snacks, to things that are even labeled as healthy and organic may contain some of these oils as well. And it's something that we need to be especially mindful of. And it's almost like as if you're playing whack-a-mole or trying to find these seed oils in a number of these products. Things that are especially important to watch out for is things like canola oil that often are included in a number of these so-called healthy foods that we consume. Read the box packaging and make sure that you keep that keen eye out for it. Now, the other thing about this is I'm not trying to give any form of judgment when it comes to the consumption of these foods. I'm very guilty of consuming these foods up until recently. However, it's something that we need to be mindful of, because sometimes in the back of our mind that voice will say it's just a little bit of oil in that packaged product, but we're not really sure exactly how much of that food contains these toxic oils, and these often wreak havoc on our health. And it's about becoming more mindful and slowly incrementally making those changes. It's not always easy to avoid these 100% of the time. Sometimes you need to go out to a restaurant and they may be using the cheapest of oils in cooking their foods. And when we end up consuming these foods oblivious of it, we're still consuming it. It's not like it's changing anything if we just turn a blind eye to what we are consuming. However, it's to be compassionate with yourself and to be mindful and try and make those incremental changes. Occasionally, it may happen that we need to consume some of these foods that have these toxic ingredients in them. However, over time we can start to really sort of make progress towards eliminating these foods, and we become less and less dependent on them. So it's always one step at a time, and having that compassion for yourself to get up every time you slip, because believe me, I've slipped many times on this path, and sometimes I still do. I may pick up a packaged product that has some of these processed foods oils in them. And unfortunately, even though we try and choose the healthiest version, they may still have some of these seed oils in them. But we can always try and choose the oils that are the least worst on the spectrum of bad oils. So here's an easy rule of thumb to generally go with. Every time we extract, we modify, or we process a whole food to the point where it's unrecognizable from its original form, it's no longer the same living, nutritious whole food. It's now a dead food that is probably synthetic and toxic to our health. And when these foods undergo so much of processing, this is usually when those alarm bells should start ringing in our minds, and we should let go of the consumption of these types of foods. And generally, this rule of thumb will help steer us to much more healthier, wholesome foods that are actually beneficial for our health. Now, not all these oils are equally terrible. Oils like canola oil, that's like your bottom of the barrel stuff yet. You generally want to avoid at all costs. Things like avocado oil, coconut oil generally tend to be a lot better. However, my personal view is that most of these oils tend to have some sort of detrimental effect on our health. So we're better off avoiding them and trying to stick with the natural whole food. However, if you must, things like those avocado oil, coconut oil can tend to be much more better if we have to cheat or we have to consume some of these so-called oils, or if we need them for a transition period. At the end of the day, just remember, I'm not here to tell you what to eat and what not to eat. However, your body will provide you with the signals that you need and the guidance in terms of what is good for it and what's not good for it. It's about us becoming more sensitive and listening to the whispers that your body is giving you. It took me many years to be able to listen to those whispers and the signals that the body is giving you. However, the more in tune we get with the body, the more we can listen to those whispers and make those changes and feed the body what it really needs, not what those parasites are sending signals to your mind with, trying to get you to gravitate to all these food cravings that we generally have. Alright, if your kitchen feels personally attacked after this video, then just remember, you're not alone. Hit that subscribe button if you want to go along this journey with me and unlearn a lot of the nonsense that we've been fed over the years about so-called healthy foods and dodge a lot of these health traps. With that, I'll catch you in the next one.